Testicles 1, 2. Hello. Welcome back to Meaningful Times with Friends, episode 24. Welcome back to the show. We have Nathan from Newark, Spoolie D, Jason on location. Do we have any apologies for last week? I didn't get any feedback that were warranted. I don't know if you guys feel sorry for anything. You guys good? So we have no sorries. We're all good. No sorries. We are champions for a week. All right, so moving on. Let's get to the topics at hand. So we our first topic, I think we'll let Spoolie D lead into it. It's been on our itinerary for a minute. It was brought up last year. Really, it's a broad subject, but I think we had a window into it thanks to some information that was brought to our attention this week with Spoolie D. And this topic is science. So let's have our resident science expert, Spoolie D, take lead on this. Spoolie, what's going on with science?
Yeah, first of all, much like the city and county of San Francisco, I love science. I dare say I have borderline romantic feelings for science. And that's why it hurts me when I see science being abused, misrepresented, misused, and dare I say, and Jason's going to start glitching when I say this, anthropomorphized.
But what does that even mean?
It means when we attribute human-like characteristics to animals, right, Jason?
Yeah. It's Mickey Mouse walking around on his, hind feet and having gloves on and speaking.
But you're asserting that science is being anthropomorphized.
I mean that as a metaphor. So I'm using a lot of big words here. So yes, not literally anthropomorphized because science is not an animal. But I mean it as a metaphor because we're attributing things to it that it is not. Science is a method, right? You have a hypothesis and you test it and you observe the different results and you come to a conclusion, but the conclusion is always subject to the scientific method to keep testing and observing, and it evolves over time. That's science, and that's the science I know and love.
Where did we first learn this method, too? I believe it was Mr. Knight's class.
I know.
It was introduced to us in 7th grade, Mr. Knight's class. So it's...
Yeah.
Shout out to Mr. Knight.
We learned this... I think you learned it in elementary school. I remember learning about the cowpox in 5th grade. But anyways, the scientific method is that. What people confuse it as is a unassailable absolute that cannot be questioned. And that's a problem. The other problem is when people take actually it's in a different order, right? So people take a scientific conclusion based on the evidence, facts, and that's it. And not all science is created. Nathan was saying water is wet. Well, we can observe that. We can test it all the time. We test it to be more than likely a universal truth. Now, you could at some point disprove that. That's what started this particular topic. So what started this for me a long time ago was nutritional science, where we're talking about this is back in the 80s, where they were talking about margarine's so good for you. It's good for your heart. And they kept selling Missoula and Country Crock and all of this stuff. I can't believe it's not butter. And it was this margarine craze because it's better for your heart because it's made from vegetables. At a certain point, I'm a kid, right? And then at a certain point, they're they're about as good for you. Now it's margarine's actually not that good for you. Now there's a whole backlash. Seed oils in general, like canola oil, which is now it's butter is better for you. And I'm what the hell is going on? Because each time it was presented as this is absolutely the facts. And so what came up the other day was an article popped up on my phone about the Earth's core is rotating and is starting to rotate much slower. Therefore, it could create a phenomenon that's going to create slightly longer days. And I commented how on earth, do they know that the core is, first of all, a separate and distinct body because they've never actually drilled. How do they know it's made out of nickel and iron? And how do they know it's rotating? And then how do they know it's rotating slower? Is they're inferring this from modeling seismic activity and so on. That's much different than observing water being wet or hydration in general.
Okay, after that long, droll, fucking boring introduction.
Well, I'm not the one who chose the topic either. I just made a comment and you guys got mad.
No, you just got to summarize real quick. Article pissed me off, as usual. Shocker. and about science.
It didn't piss me off. No, you're misrepresenting it. So what I'm saying is, first of all, there's clearly no emotion on my side of this argument, other than this is preposterous. Secondly, what I'm saying is when they take things that are clearly not proven out and presenting them as fact. That's my issue with it.
Yeah, I got that. I fucking got that. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, not all is vetted with direct observation. So if you want a speculation built on top of other speculation, built on top of other speculation, build an entire conclusion off of multiple without actually testing them and directly observing them.
Okay, all right, we've got enough of that. Let's go to the other guys. Nathan, some of your thoughts on this wonderful subject.
So much of what forms the basis of all this garbage is based on our chat. And just like you started this conversation with a reference to a 7th grade teacher, look, we all went to the same school. I never had that fucking teacher. I have no idea who he is. That's like, so like, I always feel like Spooley's beefs with these things are always rooted in some sort of 30-year-old beef with a teacher that you guys had in high school at some point. It's like, there's a bit of like anger at authority that's always tied into the argument against why these things are wrong. Here's the thing. I have zero understanding of this subject. I don't know a goddamn thing about the Earth's rotation or the core and how it relates to everything else and how our days are going to shorten by seconds. Like, none of that is within my understanding of this world at all.
They don't understand it either.
Most of my frustration with this isn't with Spooley or with the science itself. It's just with this anti-intellectual sort of, I'm going to do my own research sentiment that pervades everything right now, where people question everything. Like, experts are distrusted. People are proud of being dumb these days. And so I feel like most of my frustration, like I said, has nothing to do with Spooley and his feelings on this. It's just sort of me venting about just like, okay, let's say we're being lied to and the core isn't moving. To what end? Like, did fucking the Timex people get to fucking the core guys? They're like, look, we want to sell watches with 3 more seconds on them. So if you guys spread this lie, we can sell new watches that have more seconds and we can all make money. Like, I just don't understand how distrust is seeped into so much fucking shit. And that's really all I have to say on this subject. It's just, I can vent about this forever and I don't want to.
What I don't understand is how you can equate doing research and critically questioning things and skepticism. How do you equate that to anti-intellectualism? Like, it's actually intellectual to analyze things and question things. How is that anti-intellectual? That's anti-intellectual. It's actually like researching.
You're not paying attention. I think Nate's case is somewhat strong in the fact that the line's been so blurred. You have dumbass. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. That there are people who are too incompetent to recognize their own level of incompetence, and they think that they're critically thinking, just questioning anything. And
that's not what I'm talking about, though.
No, so we know that, but the fact that you are deliberately not seeing the parallel.
Do you at least admit that part of your problem with this is sort of that, like, it's personal? It's an authority issue, right? Like, it's these people from high up who are saying, we know this stuff that we believe to be true. And you're like, yeah, you guys don't know. And that's sort of, it sticks in your craw, right?
No, it's a logical fallacy to say just because someone has X credential
fallacy.
That logical fallacy. That's why it's called a logical fallacy, because it's a fallacy to believe just because someone has a credential in something that they automatically are right about something.
Please bring up some Latin that you know to speak to e pluribus unum to your fucking point, Jason.
Okay, I'll say this. So, a long time ago, scientists believed that flies were caused by rotting meat, that spontaneous generation was a thing, because they observed if they put a piece of meat in a jar and closed it, maggots would appear and suddenly flies. So they thought flies came from rotting meat. Now, obviously, our understanding of the situation has evolved with further observation. And so while at one time scientists believed that spontaneous generation was a thing, we now understand that no, the flies are laying the eggs in the meat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't think that there's any like malicious intent behind the misunderstanding. It's just understanding evolves and science evolves. That's the whole point of studying and doing further study and so on and so forth. We don't necessarily know a lot of things that are true. We think a lot of things are true. And while they do say, so we've figured out that there are all these other planets out there in the universe based on seeing shadows fly in front of stars and things. And so they don't necessarily know what kind of planets those are, but they do come up with a lot of inferences based on our understanding of physics, etc. And so, well, it may or may not be true. I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying, okay, yes, that is true for now. We know that now, but understanding evolves. So that's sort of the arms and the arms. It's really...
No, I agree. I agree 100%, Jason. And I think that's the distinction I'm trying to draw, is where you say, like, yes, that's our understanding thus far. That's science. Like, that's how science works. What I've noticed is that caveat or that level of like humility doesn't exist in most places where they're saying things. And the example is like I was at the Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, the beautiful city, San Francisco, and I go into the planetarium, and first of all the celebrities you could choose to narrate this, they chose Whoopi Goldberg. So her voice is not held up very well. And she's just talking about the Big Bang, man, as if she were there and witnessing it. And it's like, come on, like, it's a theory, but you don't know this for a fact. But just hammering this to all these like young impressionable minds, like, this is what happened, and we know it happened. And that was the way she was saying it.
Let's get into solution-based thought. Who would be the better narrator?
James, okay, first of all,
James Earl Jones. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Yeah, that's the answer to all of this.
James Earl Jones is always the answer to that question.
Oh, because he's been to space.
Morgan Freeman would be
excellent. His voice has been in space. I got it.
Kevin Meaney would be a good choice.
He's dead.
He's no longer with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tiny Tim.
He's no longer with us. So, you know.
Yeah. The other one that's rich is dinosaurs. Like, they teach us this. Like, they taught us all this. They teach you in like second or third grade as if like this is fact. Do you remember the Brontosaurus? Like, the Brontosaurus was like probably the second or third most popular dinosaur when we were kids. So like the T-Rex and maybe the Stegosaurus, the pterodactyl is like kind of the big four, the Mount Rushmore of dinosaurs. And then some point in like the late 90s, early 2000s, we're like, oh yeah, there was no Brontosaurus. It's like, what? And honestly, like, I didn't even like think about dinosaurs. I just kind of assumed they were real. And then you start researching, and it's like, they've never found an intact dinosaur of that size, like an actual, like they found them like the size of alligators. And so I just looked it up today, like what's like the, intact dinosaur? And they found something 3 days ago. They found like a head and like a chest. And then they launched into like, this existed 90 billion years ago. It's a Locosaurus. And it had, it was the world's largest herbivore. And it's like, how the hell are you like spinning all this shit off? And it's not even like the news thing. It's just more like, why are they teaching like children this in school? Why do they teach us this as if it were unassailable fact? What Jason's talking about makes more sense, where it's like, Pluto was a planet, now it's not a planet. I mean, it's there. Like, who cares? But the dinosaur one's always ridiculous. And if you start talking about, like, oh, I don't believe that dinosaurs, like, existed because there's no proof. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying, like, the proof they have is like, a far, far bridge to cross to get to, like, fact. Like, people look at you like you're a flat earther. It's crazy.
There's a lot in what you're saying believe me, I make valid point. What I'm trying to also point out is that you're making certain arguments and cases that, again, we have a very stupid constituency in our country that's been given a lot of voice and power since the age of not just the internet, but you have your QAnon, you have all this other stuff where that little bit of skepticism has grown in a much grander way to just speculate on anything as fact, as Nathan pointed out. In my experience of hearing you talk about the science thing, it's kind of like somebody getting really up in arms over the travel section in the newspaper.
Get it up in arms? Look at all my arms.
Yeah, you're very up in arms. You got 4 arms. Again, as Jason pointed out, science is an ongoing kind of thing, and what I've gotten more from what your beef seems to be the reporting of it, and the fact that we live now today in a media climate, not just social media, but all forms of media that are desperate for attention, for clicks and all of that. So they're going to be eager to report anything, even if it's not exactly true, fully true or whatever. And I'm sure that there are science people that are playing into that because they're trying to make a name for themselves too. in the movie Oppenheimer, which again, I ain't studying any of this shit. I go to the movies, but I watch Oppenheimer, and in the movie, one of the things that they talk about, getting studies and getting published and all that kind of shit. And all of Oppenheimer is fucking theory. All of the guy himself he worked in quantum physics theory. And then out of all of that, when they needed to make the atomic bomb based on when they split the atom and all that other shit, they were able to figure out a way to make the most deadly device, known to humans at the time based out of theory. We didn't get up to date reports on that shit because they were obviously trying to keep that under wraps and all that shit until they, had to prove that it worked. But today, a lot of media just trying to get your attention. To be perfectly honest, if something came up that said, we found, a whole breed of cows living in the center of the earth, I wouldn't really give a shit. What you were telling us was like, they're telling us that this Earth's core bullshit is true, and it's going to, I didn't even read the article that you sent me.
That tracks.
And I didn't read the follow-up only because it's like, that's their fucking bullshit. And I don't even understand getting up in arms over it too much because it's...
I have one less arm since the last time we
understood. I get it. Your play on words is beautiful. But it's more just your emotional response to these articles as if they matter. And they don't. They're just trying to get your attention. They're trying to garner what attention that they can for whatever purposes that they serve for themselves. It's literally just science clickbait.
It's totally it's hot garbage, and it's basically
your days are going to be affected by the center of the earth.
Okay. So yes, that was an innocuous example, just to like give an example of something that doesn't really affect us, right? What does affect things though is like, and I'm going to tread very lightly here. If you talk about something like climate change, right? You actually will get censored on YouTube if you have an alternate view. And why is that? And this is what I always find fascinating about it. And I don't claim one way or another. I'm just saying this. If you bring it up to someone of a certain political view, they will get very passionate about it one way or another, right? Either this is happening and this is real, or this isn't happening and it's a hoax. But none of them can explain to you how it works. And that to me is the dangerous part of this clickbait, especially when it gets legs like climate change. And then that turns into policy, right? And that's where you get into, like, if you're on the left, you believe that we need to like reduce carbon emissions. Now, 99% of left people cannot fucking explain how that works, how it's measured, all that stuff. You go to the right, it's a hoax. We need to shut all this shit down. We need to fucking start burning coal like in our homes just cause, right? But they can't explain to you why it's a hoax. And that's I think and that's why I didn't bring up that topic, because it's so politically charged. That's where it starts getting dangerous, is where people start hiding behind science instead of having a discussion. We should have a robust discussion, but because people are afraid of actually having a discussion,
we're not scientists.
That doesn't matter, Dave. They won't allow credentialed scientists to debate it.
If you really want to get into it, you go do the schoolwork and you go hang out with those fucking nerds. Go. What you are talking about, though, is a very real thing. Christopher Nolan, director of Oppenheimer, was pointing out that the fact that people use search engines, mainly Google primarily, to find their information, thinking that this whole internet is access to all the information, and it's not. He asserted that if you were to go to the library, find 10 random items in like books or whatever of facts or whatnot, and then tried to Google those items, that you would probably find very few, if any, on Google of what you found in the library. And that Google, the power that they have is by limiting your access to what information is out there.
100%.
They're one of 100%. The only games in town, because they are a corporation. They are the gatekeeper of information, so they can steer it in any direction.
And I want to add on to your point. And if you look at the polling of the people that work in these companies, they're strongly of one political ideology, and that actually affects the information that comes out.
No
and
doubt.
That affects people's understanding. And that's all I'm saying. I'll conclude this. What I'm saying is there's a difference between things that we can provably observe, and there's things that are more theoretical. And the danger of the way everything is reported as if it's objective fact is that people believe it. And then it gets even worse when it becomes political. Some things become political. And when that happens, then people don't critically think, and then they get emotional about it and angry. And that's the danger. And that's all I want, is us to just critically think and understand that science is a method. Anyways, thanks for having a civilized discussion.
I think the only thing that needs to be done here is to apply the scientific method to any reporting. Maybe
100%.
put it through the scientific method in and of itself. There are people that would be like, why would the news lie? There are those people, and more or less that comes to like events of the day. But I think, when it comes to the science, the travel site, the only main pieces of the newspaper that I ever knew people to read primarily was local news, world news, and the entertainment section. And I think a lot of the rest of it's just fodder that's just you can line your kitty litter box with.
I'll bring the documentary up for the third time in this show's history. Is Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky explains why they do that.
He's not dead, by the way. Everybody pulled him off last week in the week of Donald Sutherland passing, and who else died? There was another Willie Mays died. Say hey, Willie Mays, and Justin Timberlake was arrested for DUI. Hawk to a lady, which is pure science.
Would she die?
No, she's alive. She hawked to a and she spit on that thing, which is scientific fact.
I know it's a little off topic, but is that a turn on for you? Not her, but that act.
Not really. No.
Jason?
That is such a porn thing. That is people taking porn and applying it to their own lives, basically, is the way I see it.
That's something to apply the scientific method to, right there.
Well, I'm doing it right now. I'm taking a little bit of data in here, Nathan.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Would you like it when a woman spits on your?
That's a huge bitch.
While giving a blowjob, hawk to a.
Okay, spitting or like getting phlegm on like what are we talking here? Let's get granular.
You've seen a batter come up to the bat box and and get ready to like they do that on your dome.
I mean, I guess it's situational, right? If you're super dry, you need a little something there. So
man, you are pure middle of the road, even when it comes to hawk tua. That is great.
That was the hypothesis. What at least one of us would be into it.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, well, moving on. All right. Our next topic, we are expanding our horizons in this episode. Something was brought to our attention that really moved us. Jason will be taking the lead here as soon as I find my wonderful background to go with it. We have a poem that is to be read.
Nathan's just like, fuck this. I'm out.
Nathan, where the fuck did you go?
Yeah, he's like, what'd you do with my collected works of Allen Ginsberg? What the hell?
Sorry.
You changed the angle so you had more books in the background? So
it's the same angle that it was before.
Was it? I just didn't notice the books. All right, whatever.
Yeah, I want everyone to know that I have choose your own adventure books on my shelf.
Just so I can see
just so you can see how smart I am.
All right.
At the risk of pissing Nathan off, actually in Mr. Costin's class, I sold a duffel bag of all of my choose your own adventure books to Peter Feder for $100.
I'll follow up on that. I got him on Facebook. All right. So, without further ado, we have a poem to be read by Jason on location.
Okay, so let me just start by saying that this is not. I didn't suggest this poem so that we could discuss the relative merits of poetry, because I don't want to sit here and be irritated by all of your wrong opinions. And I almost forgot to take my blood pressure medication before the show. So I'm going to be cool, calm, and collected about this. The reason I wanted to read this poem and talk about it is because of the sentiment behind it. And we can get into that after I've read it out. It's by a poet by the name of Jameson Fitzpatrick. It's called I Woke Up, and I will begin reading it now. I woke up, and it was political. I made coffee, and the coffee was political. I took a shower, and the water was. I walked down the street in short shorts and a Bob Miser tank top, and they were political. The walking and the shorts and the beefcake silkscreen of the man posing in a G-string. I forgot my sunglasses, and later, on the train, that was political, when I studied every handsome man in the car. Who I thought was handsome was political. I went to work at the university, and everything was very obviously political. The department and the institution. All the cigarettes I smoked between classes were political, where I threw them when I was through. I was blonde, and it was political. So was the difference between blonde and blonde with an E. I had long hair, and it was political. I shaved my head, and it was. That I didn't know how to grieve when another person was killed and America was political, and it was political when America killed another person, who they were and what color and gender and who I am in relation. I couldn't think about it for too long without feeling a helplessness like childhood. I was a child and it was political, being a boy who was bad at it. I couldn't catch, and so the ball became political. My mother read to me almost every night, and the conditions that enabled her to do so were political. That my father's money was new was political, that it was proving something. Someone called me a faggot, and it was political. I called myself a faggot, and it was political. How difficult my life felt relative to how difficult it was political. I thought I could become a writer, and it was political that I could imagine it. I thought I was not a political poet, and still my imagination was political. It had been this whole time I was asleep. Now, I read this when it was first published in like 2017, and I was immediately blown away because it expressed something that I related to a lot. Because growing up, I was one of those kids who was into punk rock, but like didn't like political punk rock. Like, I didn't like, Bad Religion because they were too preachy and full of shit. And I just hated all that crap, and never understanding that the political wasn't just a political message. It was also an attitude. It was a way of being. It was existing in the world. And then even in the fact that I wanted to avoid politics was in itself a political thing, and that I felt that I could separate myself from it, that I felt able to ignore it or think that I was ignoring it, even though I was engaged in it completely. And the reason I thought of this poem is because of the prevalence these days of, I see a lot of people online complaining about politics entering their entertainment, like I used to do when I was into the punk rock scene. And I just find it incredibly idiotic that people want to remove politics from the entertainment as if it's not, everything is not inherently political. And the fact that they don't want politics is a political statement. And so I just wanted to talk about that, not about whether poetry is good or not, or whether this poem is good. Although I have to admit, I feel very foolish now. But when I said, hey, let's read this poem, and I sent the link, I thought, oh, they're going to like this one because this is a fucking good one. This one's really good. They're going to be into it because it's not, shitty poetry. It's good poetry, and they'll fucking dig it. And then immediately Nathan was just like, yeah, everybody who reads poetry is a fucking douchebag.
I didn't say that directly.
That's me. You're talking about me. I read poetry.
Here's the thing. And here's the thing about that. So, and again, we're delving back into what our chat is within the show, but 99% of what we talk about in our chat is beyond insincere. It's busting balls and never really being serious. So when you presented this poem, bringing into my own feelings about poetry, I thought you were making a joke. I genuinely did. So, of course, I started piling on because, I'm like, okay, I'm getting into the spirit of our chat, kind of. I don't like poetry, and we're not talking about poetry here, but I genuinely didn't think you were being serious. So. And that's kind of what led to that.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
You heard the one about the gay Irishman? Jameson Fitzpatrick and Patrick Fitzjameson?
That's fucking good.
No, it isn't.
Well, Dave's the expert. Dave's the credentialed expert. So, last word. Sorry, it wasn't funny.
All that energy in that direction. All right. Well, let's open it up. I mean, Nate basically commented on his response in our chat. But what are your thoughts on the poem, Nathan?
I thought it was a bit much. I feel like I am sort of turned off by things where it sort of feels like you're being scolded, and that's kind of what this poem makes me feel, as if like you, by wanting to sit down and watch a baseball game and just wanting to be entertained. Do you have a long day at work? You just want to have a couple beers and watch something that is just entertaining and takes your mind off wars and politics and everything in the world? You are a bad person for wanting to simply just relax. You want to listen to some opera? I don't speak German, but was there anything political mentioned in that opera you were listening to? Do you like that dinner you're having? Is that steak political? I mean, those mashed potatoes, where did they come from? Do you know? Like, I just feel like I'm not belittling what the person's talking about in the poem. We have genuine problems that need to be addressed, but I think my reaction was just that I found the way that it was being addressed in that poem to be like over serious, and I don't know. It frustrates me in dealing with something where it just makes you feel genuinely bad inside. Like, do you know the problems of the world and how dare you? That's just kind of how it felt to me. I don't know.
That's amazing because I don't see any of that in this poem. I don't see any scolding or value judgments. I just see somebody realizing that the whole time they thought they were just existing in the world, innocent of politics. Everything, and in fact, is political. Everything's infused with politics, and they're just realizing it for the first time. That's kind of how I saw it. I didn't read it as instructing people how they should feel or judging people for not being aware of politics in their lives. I just thought that it was somebody who suddenly realized, oh wait, as much as I thought that I was just existing in the world, like politics is inescapable. The political acts are everywhere, even though I'm not really aware that I'm engaging in them. Kind of a thing.
Nate, it's in an irony. Nate is still the person who's not realizing that everything they're doing is political.
He hasn't woken up yet.
Yeah, he's still sleeping, Nate. So and you're not going to be shamed in that sleep. So there you go. So sleep
thank God. Ugh.
Spoolie D, what are your thoughts?
Spoolie D on poetry. Here we go. So first of all, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that Nathan kind of spun into a Katharine Hepburn at the end of his spiel. That was incredible.
On golden poetry.
And thank you for explaining it, Jason. And this is the reason why I don't like poetry, and it's not poetry itself, because it's a preferred medium. Like David and I both love, and you probably do too, Jason, the Twilight Zone, because it's a medium through which you can make really profound statements, but you're expressing a different way. Like not everything is just linear, like I communicate, right? Like hit you over the head, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this is what I think. Like science fiction is great. Cartoons are great for that. Comedy is great for that. Like Idiocracy. I remember Dave gave that to me as a wedding gift, basically telling me not to have kids. And he said, like, this isn't a comedy, this is science fiction. So shit like that, like where you can, the best way, like the best conduit for meaning to each person is different. And I've known Jason since we were 12. And Jason's always been a lot smarter than me about poetry and literary interpretation. Like those are two competencies that he has. Like I can't read a fucking book and always get the meaning of it. I can get it, but if I read a poetry, I guarantee you 100% of the time I don't get the meaning. I like zone out and I just don't get it. And that's not an indictment on poetry. I just don't like it. Same thing with musical theater. Like those two mediums, they're just a turnoff, but it's more of a, and I think aesthetic's the wrong word. It's just a matter of taste. Now that Jason's actually fucking explaining me what the poem means, I love it. Not the poem, but I love the message. Because I think that's a fallacy where people say, oh, you shouldn't be political. It's like everything's political. And it really is. Like if I go through and scroll through like all of our comments, there's like politics laced in there. And you can't even objectively like regurgitate. You can't even be a news aggregator without being political. Even if you don't even say a word, the articles that you choose and the order in which you choose to display them just on a cold like news aggregator is political. And political is really just a point of view. It's like how you view the world, like from a subjective standpoint. And we all do that all the time. And now that Jason's explained to me what the poem means, I completely 100,000% science believe and agree with the message. But I'll be fucking honest. I was just like, okay, yeah, we fucking get it. It's political. Like, just shut the fuck up. Like, can't we just go with one line here? Because I didn't fucking understand it because I'm an ignoramus in certain things.
Well, obviously I didn't either. So yeah.
Yeah. But the Katharine Hepburn saved the whole thing, so it doesn't matter. Do you have a W.C. Fields?
No, my W.C. Fields is pretty weak.
I'm just glad we got it on record. Spoolie D listening to an expert and accepting their interpretation.
No, that's not what happened. What I listened to
exactly what happened. I just saw it in real time right there.
Explaining to me
giving credit to someone and not knowing what was going on and having their intertation be accepted.
Yeah. Because his interpretation was logical and it made sense. I'm not going to say like I need to listen. I shouldn't listen to KBRG because Nathan tells me not to because he's a radio professional.
Saying like, and what makes you such an expert on poetry, Jason? What makes you so smarty? How do I know it's not political, huh? Like, no, that's really. I got your political right here. Anyway, the funny thing was in hearing Nathan's response, I can understand why that kind of felt. The poem overwhelms you. When Jason described it as not being some attack, I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought it was. I did feel it was long, but that's kind of the point. It is kind of trying to drive the point home of anything can be, made political from when you look at it close enough. And not only that, but it's also just sort of how the impact that the world has on you sometimes. You may not realize how you affect it and how, your choices, your decisions, your simple being. Yeah, just I'm not a poetry guy per se, but I've tried to keep an open mind. I always feel like it's word puzzles for people that want to get, it's like artsy word puzzles for people when they would be brought up in class or whatever. A lot of times I wouldn't understand how, the summer fields represented the virginity of young Jonathan. And, I never understood any of the metaphors and all that kind of shit in that regard. I could understand what metaphors were and all that. It's just I just don't go looking for the shit. That's why when you showed us this poem, I read it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, this is something I can see as like song lyrics. That's probably my window into poetry, is hearing cool song lyrics and stuff. And one of my favorite bands, they like to use gibberish as lyrics and a lot of stuff. And I like that. It's how something sounds and all that stuff and how it makes you feel. That's where like Nathan's impression of it's completely valid, because I think that's if it makes you uncomfortable, there's probably a good reason for that. Not like it's any attack. It's just like, yeah, it's I like things that make me feel unsettled sometimes, because then it makes me kind of wonder what is unsettling about it. Like I don't go on the kiddie roller coaster. I want to go on the roller coaster that's going to genuinely almost make me sick, to see where the threshold is and see where the line is. And so with all good art, I think it's provocative in a certain sense, and this was sort of provoking in a good way. It got more provocative too when you started introduction of the dreaded gay slur that we try to avoid these days. When it comes to problematic language that will definitely get us flagged on YouTube. So hopefully they understand context. But other than that, yeah, no, it's pretty cool, and I appreciated the fact that Jason brought it to our attention so that we could mock it and eventually grow to accept it.
Mock me, yes.
Yeah, not mock you. We mocked it. Oh, not you. You're the. It's just like,
you're
better than me. You think you're better than me because you know a poem? Yeah,
I made that distinction in our chat when you came back and were like, "What the fuck?" And I was kind of like, "I stand by what I think about poetry, but all of what you said was not what I said about you."
Well, okay, the actual thing you wrote, just to clarify, so people don't think that you actually called me a douchebag directly. What you said was, do people who read poetry pat themselves on the back every time they finish a poem?
Yeah.
I was you're making a hypothetical talking about people who read poetry. I'm the person that you're talking about here, Buster.
If I may translate that, though, I think Nathan and I are probably on the same spectrum of like we look at it and we're just like, yeah, I don't get it. It's not even enjoyable. It's just like music. If I don't get the lyrics, it's still like maybe a good song. But I look at poetry, I'm like, this is really unpleasant. I want to go do anything else. But I think what it comes from, and I'm not speaking for Nathan, I'm speaking for me. I think it's just because I don't understand it. Like you get it, and like when you explain it, it makes sense. And so I think that's the thing. It's like, I would pat myself on the back if I actually fucking understood it. I really would take a fucking victory lap around this empty office.
I think there's something also that we're missing here, that is the fact that we heard Jason read it, and poetry is very much meant to be read and performed in a sense that a lot of poetry, albeit it's the written word and it's all of the format and syntax and all that kind of shit. It's a lot like reading music when really I think poetry is more enjoyable when it's read by its author or
I still didn't understand it until he explained it.
No, but a lot of good the only poetry I would say I enjoyed has been somebody reading their poem, even if it's the most pretentious shit ever. But like I can enjoy a poem more when it's read by somebody as opposed to when it's just on the page. I don't really care that much about seeing the little word salad on the page.
Yeah.
We have another poem, and he probably thinks that we forgot about it, and he better have it queued up, because as much as
please no.
This is
great. You're reading it, motherfucker. Oh, no, you better have it. Good. Get that poem ready. I wasn't forgetting about shit. He may have done this in response, it may be whatever, but this is just as valid as anything else. We have another poem written by Nathan from Newark. So without further ado, Nathan.
Okay. This is called An Ode to Burritos. Or how dare you enjoy burritos while the earth burns? Burritos of golden dreams, filled with fascist salsas and sour creams. Slaughtered carne asada, Palestinian intifada. Police violence, Eric Estrada. Humanity yearning for peace, and a tostada.
It's the carne asada intifada one that got me, and then just tagging it with Eric Estrada. That I don't. Again, no fucking idea what it's. None of us know what that means, but that wordplay is just fucking.
Did you not watch Chips?
Did you not? I did, absolutely, but yeah, I know who Eric Estrada is, and I know what Lake Shastina is, for Christ's sakes.
No, that's called a desperate search for something that rhymes.
Yeah,
that's just funny though.
So there you go.
You see, this is the difference between something that has weight to it and pure pap to feed your mind. Something
disdainful garbage. Yeah.
Little giggle, little resentful entertainment. So, but yes, wonderful poem, Nate. Sarcastic as it may be. Well done. So, all right, cool. I think
poetry slam.
Nice little discussion. That was good stuff, guys. Way to go. Way to go for our first poem.
Believe me, I don't sit down and read poetry every day, and I don't always get it.
You do not need to qualify any of what you do or don't do in enjoying your poetry. You know, we only qualify anything Spoolie D says. That's the only thing that needs to qualify anything. All right, so up next, we have a song, and this too was selected by Jason. And this was a song. It was cool to hear it come up. These are the guys. You wouldn't know them. They just look like three white dudes against a badly painted wall. They're called John or
Peter, Bjorn, and John.
What is it again? Pete. What?
Peter, Bjorn, and John.
Peter, Bjorn, and John without a comma, which is very confusing. These are three dudes from Sweden. Or at least they formed in Sweden, and they made a song called Young Folks. It came out in 2006 and became somewhat of a hit. It felt like a sleeper hit, but as was pointed out by Nathan in our chat, you couldn't avoid it. It was everywhere. It's and proof of it is the fact that Jason brought it up.
You couldn't avoid it, apparently, but I only first heard it like 2 months ago. I heard it for the first time, and I was struck by how insidious it was, because due to the whistling, I immediately was just like, who the fuck whistles in a song? Like, you know, what the heck is this? So it really caught my ear. And so I looked it up and found out what it was. And then when Dave said, you need to pick a song, and I said, well, initially I wanted to do Crowded House, a song by Crowded House. Then I said, or maybe this song by this Swedish band that has whistling in it. I forget the name of the band. And Dave immediately knew what I was talking about. Like, he's like, yes, the whistling song. Yes, yes. And so that's why we ended up deciding to talk about that one first, because of the immediate recognition of what I was talking about. All I had to do was say whistling, and he knew exactly what I meant.
You can Google it. You can Google the whistling song and it comes up. It's
the first result if you search for whistling song.
It's called Young Folks, but yeah, that's how I found it the first time. And even when I forgot the name, because the name I couldn't tell if it was a guy's full name and some guy's first name or whatever the fuck it was. When I hear the name of the band, it always makes me think of in the movie Death Proof, the radio DJ chick and her deep knowledge of music. Dave, D, Dozy, Pete, whatever, Pete, Mick, and Stitch, or whatever the fuck it is. And it's like, oh, we get it, bitch. We know, you know about music. It's Tarantino's fucking voice, but it's like, yeah, we know, you know about music. So it always reminded me of that name. But I do remember that it was either Young Ones or Young Folks. That's what I remembered the song was called. So, but if you look up the whistling song, it comes up. So a lot of whistling.
It's funny. I remember when this song, I was kind of like Jason in that I didn't know this song immediately when it came out, but I heard about it probably a year afterward or so. I remember my cousin Victor had said that he was someplace where there was like an elderly man who was like a janitor, and he was like mopping the floor, and he was whistling this song as he was doing that. And he was like, man, that song is inescapable right now. Even old dudes who are mopping floors in malls or whatever are whistling that song. And I remember at the time I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't think I've heard this song. And then sometime like immediately following that, I heard this song, and I didn't know it was the song Victor was talking about, but I knew it was what he was talking about because it was whistling, and it was a super catchy song. And immediately following that, it was probably 2007, the song suddenly was everywhere. You know how, like, and I'll get, since we just left poetry and we're on music, I'll get artsy fartsy with like how I feel about this song now. You know how they say that scent is one of our senses that brings up strong feelings of emotion and memories. It's like scent really triggers memories. Well, for me, music really has this powerful way of bringing up emotions in me. And this song, it's got like a really melancholy feel to it. And it reminds me of a time in my life where a lot was going bad. And in listening to this song for this episode, it's weird how it really brought a lot of that back for me. And it really brought back like this period in my life where I was going through a tough time. It still kind of brought back that melancholy feeling for me all these years later. It was kind of weird. The video was interesting to watch. That was kind of like the fun aspect of rediscovering the song for the discussion today. It seemed like super cute, like in a way that I wouldn't have guessed like the video would have gone. Because it was kind of like, I think someone who was supposed to be one of the singers and a female who wasn't in that picture that you showed there, and different scenarios that they were going through where they were at a party and like, I don't know, and then they disappear at one point. So I don't know. Overall, I thought this was a great pick for a song to talk about just because it made me feel something pretty strongly. That's all I have to say. Not to get overly serious about a whimsical song, but yeah.
I want to point something out that if you'll notice, two different mediums, two different completely artistic mediums, yet both making Nate uncomfortable, yet different response to young folks than to the poem. It's strange how art affects us all. Spoolie D.
Yeah, Nathan, I think if you look up some like the greatest works of E. Cummings, I think it'll probably settle you. You'll feel like grounded. It's very linear. So to answer your question, Jason, who whistles in the song? The answer to that question is Otis Redding. Because I was racking my brain. I was like, what? There's got to be another song. I didn't look it up. I was just listening. I was like thinking in my head, like, there's got to be another one. And today, I was like, Otis Redding, Dock of the Bay. So that's the other one where you have the iconic whistle.
Not to interrupt. It's just that's kind of the outro. It's not like in the.
I think it's actually the solo.
Maybe, but it's still towards the end.
Like it's prominent though. I'm saying if you think about singing on the Dock of the Bay, you're going to think of that whistling part. That's my point. Where this is part of the hook. So, I mean, and you could also compare it to like Europe's The Final Countdown. It's not whistling, but there's an instrumental piece which dominates. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a similar concept to where there's typically a song is going to be, you know, the verse or the chorus or the verse chorus or the solo is going to be iconic. And then there's just somewhere that weird instrumental hook, it dominates like your memory of it. And like, that's why I bring up The Final Countdown, because like, that's all you can think of when you think of The Final Countdown is just that stupid keyboard riff. Same thing with Jump by Van Halen, to a lesser extent. There's probably more. But anyways, this song reminds me of back when I used to live in San Francisco. This was like a prime like going out time. This is when I probably partied the hardest in my life. Dave and I were playing, I think around this time we were playing a lot of shows. And there was this bar down the street from my house called The Transfer. It's on the corner of Church and Market and 14th. That's how corners work in San Francisco. I think it's now called the Churchill. And it's been a bunch of things. But they used to have this party, which is called Frisco Disco, which was just pure unadulterated debauchery. They'd have a DJ. They'd put a piece of plywood on the pool table so people could dance on it. And it was just like drunken, coke-fueled, groping debauchery. And they always played this song. So that was like the first thing that reminded me was of those times where probably a little bit over the top in terms of rough living and not sleeping and going out like 4 or 5 times a week. That's what it invoked. Particularly, I listened to the song, I watched the video. I don't particularly like it. It's a little bit like, it's kind of got low vibration energy, meaning it's like, even though it's catchy, it's just kind of like, it's kind of a bummer. It just kind of drags. It doesn't really like peak and ebb and flow. It just kind of stays in this weird, like low vibration energy. And while it's like catchy and good and like, I don't know, I find it kind of depressing. This may be the cause of the issue, Nathan, not not the reminder. But anyways, it was interesting. It's definitely like a departure from some of the wacky shit that we've been listening to. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was a hit song, but it was again a low key hit. I like this song. It creeped in along with a lot of these weird hits that were in rotation, heavy rotation on Live 105 around the early 2010s or whatever. One of the other songs that I would throw in there is that one, I forget the name of the artist, but the Somebody I Used to Know or whatever. It's that real minimalist.
Gautier.
That's right. Yeah.
The Sting impersonator.
There was that song. There's Group Love that had that song that has that weird whatever. It was these songs that had like kind of gimmick hooks in them of some kind. And there's a bunch of them. There's more I could name, like Silver Sun Pickups. They were around they had a hit at the time. Since I barely know the names of these things, I had to go looking for them on YouTube in the early 2010s when I would hear them on Live 105 and then I'd try to track them down. But this song I actually like because of kind of what everything you guys described. It is a downer vibe, but I liked how the beat was like upbeat on it. And I was reading some of their influences. These guys, one of their influences, Stone Roses, which I wouldn't say it sounds like directly, but there's like certain aspects to Stone Roses when they would play their up tempo beats that I really like kind of the break beat kind of drums, and that's kind of what this reminded me of. And I oddly enough, I like the minimalist kind of bass line. I don't like bass sounds that sound like some tweedy fucking artsy fartsy bass, a poetry bass, if you will. But no, I dug the kind of the whole tones of all of this. This was like one of those things because it sounds both classic. It sounded classic and contemporary, which is what the lyrics reflect too. It is a dude talking to a girl, and they're all basically just deciding to hook up based on whatever. Whistling is the instrument. It's a riff. And it's a catchy one because it gets stuck in your head. And yeah, it's its calling card. I don't know if Zippity Doodah had any whistling in it, but feels like there might have been some in the. I think there was some whistling songs in Songs from the South or whatever that Disney movie was that most people don't want to talk about today.
What did you guys think of the video? I watched it a couple of times and I found it hard to engage completely with the video. It seemed like a good thing that you could have on in the background, but like I couldn't really get into it.
It's interesting. It was kind of more of that time, but the weird thing is the dude looks like my nephew. It looks like my nephew. If you want, look up Dylan Wright on YouTube. He's a YouTuber, but not a far cry. It looks like Dylan on a bummer day. Yeah.
Yeah, I found the whole thing super depressing. I found their band depressing. I was wondering also if they were fucking or like the entire band was fucking her or if the entire band was fucking each other. Because I got distracted. The song is so boring that it's just like I started like really trying to speculate in terms of the relationship between the parties. And so do you think they're all banging, Dave? Or do you think they're like, it was a
I don't buy your horseshit escalation of your negative. You weren't this negative on the song until I talked about it. And then you come back with the song's boring, it sucks. No, are they all fucking? No, I don't. Not answering your question.
That's not what happened. I was just
playing into your clickbait mentality of trolling me.
You see, this is the plight I have. I know you guys. I know Schoolie.
Not a plight. It's not, whatever.
I just try and open up a little bit. And as you open your heart, Dave shoves his fist right through it. You're a predator and a
stand by your nonsense. Jason,
answer my question. Who's fucking who?
I don't know. It's up to interpretation.
Jason, what do you think in terms of like?
Why don't you ask Jason? Jason should know. He knows all, and you believe him when he says.
If it's the rationale,
you've already proven Jason is your art lord. So let's. That's your new name, Jason. Jason the Art Lord. That's your new name. All right.
Wow.
Thank you for that. Woo!
Art Lord. What's your rebuttal thoughts, Jason?
I don't have any rebuttal thoughts. I mean, whatever anybody thinks about it, it's fine. The reason it stuck with me was because it sounds like they put very little effort into it. It's like all very casual, which I think is really impressive because it's so clearly painstakingly constructed. Like there are very simple parts that all fit together kind of perfectly. I enjoy things that feel minimal, but that a lot of work went into constructing them. And I think I don't know. There's something about it. It's usually with women, like women vocals, where like it's like this like kind of dispassionate monotone. Like I really like that, like European kind of shit where it's just like really dispassionate vocals, like Serge Gainsbourg's "One en Plus" or whatever it's called. That song with the woman and all that kind of stuff. I really love like a dispassionate female vocal. Like the song. Did I ever play the song for you, "Gay Boy"? It's like a Italian disco track. It's really great. I'll send it to you guys. It's really funny. But like the vocals are just like very offhand, kind of dispassionate, low effort kind of vocals, and I really
Mazzy Star quality, if you maybe.
well, she's actually singing. Like she's really, but like it's just stuff where it's like just kind of like somebody just they can barely be bothered to hold the microphone kind of vocal style, and I really like that for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Heroin. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, you know, like the Nico thing, you know, where you just like you prop her up and she's there.
You think any of the low effort of women vocals, there's a correlation between that and witchcraft?
I don't know.
I'm just throwing that out to see if Nick will laugh.
Kind of out of left field. Yeah.
That's just random. That was just random for, you know, just putting
that's a little inside for.
Yeah,
for,
that's too inside. That's too chat inside.
No, let's explain it.
You got photos, Nate? You got any photos that we can show? Spoolie, you were about to say something?
I was just asking him to answer my question. So, because there was like a relational subtext. Was it just getting together like as a band? Is that the getting together?
It was the male vocalist and the female vocalist meeting, and the boy being kind of uncomfortable, like a shy emo boy meeting up with a girl and like approaching her, and then they decide to hook up and fuck everybody else. Like not fuck as in intercourse, fuck as in like, you know, it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. You and we have a connection.
Okay, so I'm going to depart from my art lord and say they're all just sucking each other's dicks.
Finally, sucking each other's dicks comes out into the open.
Yeah, man. Boy,
thank God.
And searching for a way to get that out of the.
Don't edit that out.
I'll do my best. I'll see what. Try to find a nice image for that on AI.
Use the one I have up here.
What is that? What the? Oh, that's a fish.
It's a fish getting rammed by another fish.
Looks so angry.
You too.
I don't look angry. I'm good, man. I'm having a good time. All right, young folks. Like I do like this song. So, and I normally hate shit where people are fucking in the song. So I normally. So this is it's depressing. Yeah, it is depressing. That's why the kid looks so down. He's like, fuck, I gotta fuck her.
This Jan Brady looking ass bitch.
Yeah, look at that little dimple, a little single dimple right there. Just like, you know, she knows it's gonna go bad for him. So, all right. Any closing thoughts, everybody? We all good? We good? No, everybody. No closing thoughts. Look at you. None on science. No last button words on science or poetry or all this shit. This is cool, man. Because I mean, I know I've been bringing it up a lot this episode, but this is our most Oppenheimer episode because it's not important whether you can read the music. It's whether you can hear the music.
And we'll be putting out a Barbie episode after this, so be sure to watch both of these back to back.
Yeah, Barbie's cool. I didn't read that much into it. So, all right. So that's that. Want to say thank you. Thanks for enjoying episode 24. I asked you guys to share this maybe with some people, and you didn't, and you even reduced our views, motherfuckers. So I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Yeah, so fine. Fuck you. Don't watch this. Whatever. See if that helps. All right. Don't tell other people about this. Keep this your little fucking ugly secret between us. You know, guilty pleasure and shit. But, all right. Spoolie D, Nathan from Newark are now dubbed Jason, the Art Lord. Great to see you. I've been Mean Dave. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for checking out the show and supporting us and all that bullshit. So, take care. Bye.
Bye.